From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Bursell. This is The Log. Let's start our look at the news today with a local story that's also a national story. I love it when Milwaukee makes the headlines. Of course, I'm podcasting here from beautiful River West, greatest neighborhood in the world in Milwaukee. And here's the headline. The Bucks, our Milwaukee Bucks, National Basketball Association champions, hire Lisa Byington, making her the first woman to be a full-time TV play-by-play broadcaster for a major men's professional sports team. So when they say major, of course, they're talking about football, baseball, basketball, and hockey. Every single team currently, except for one now, has a man as their play-by-play TV guy. Well, Lisa Byington has been hired by the defending NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks as the team's television play-by-play announcer for games on Bally Sports, Wisconsin, the Bucks announced Wednesday. The move makes Byington the first woman hired as a full-time TV play-by-play announcer for a major men's professional sports team. In a Bucks News release, Byington acknowledged the history she is making, saying, "I understand the groundbreaking nature of this hire, and I appreciate the fact that during this process, that aspect was addressed, but never made a primary focus. In fact, I applaud the Bucks for taking the first steps toward making hires like this more of the norm in the NBA, because it's time." In a tweet, Byington wrote, "I am honored, humbled, and beyond excited for this opportunity and to get this started." Byington replaces longtime Bucks announcer Jim Paschke, who retired at the end of last season after calling the team's games for 35 years. So there you go. Lisa Byington, the new voice of your champion Milwaukee Bucks. That's fantastic. What a nice piece of news. I've been a fan of the Bucks since I was a kid. Not a rabid fan, not a crazy fan, just, somebody who follows the team. And they won the championship when I was a little kid, so that was very exciting. And, when your team wins the championship when you're like 12, 13 years old, that sort of sticks with you. Those are formidable years. So I've followed the Bucks all my life. And of course, this last year, the playoff run, they wind up winning the championship in 6 games. It's all very exciting. But I'm especially happy to be a fan of the Milwaukee Bucks because the last few years, they're really doing things right. They're a great asset to the community. Everybody loves them. They walked off the floor last year when Jacob Blake was shot in Kenosha by a cop 6 times in the back. And the next day, they had a playoff game scheduled. And they suited up, they went out, and then they said, nope, and they walked off the floor. And their opponent, I think, who was it? Was the Miami Heat at the time? I forget. Anyway, they walked off the floor as well. And then the whole NBA, every player in the NBA walked off for the next several days. They said, nope, we're going to strike. So the Bucks do things right. They do it right. Good for them. And a bona fide national headline here. The first woman to be a full-time TV play-by-play broadcaster for a major men's professional sports team. Pretty cool. All right, what else is going on here? Oh, well, okay, today is what? Today's Friday the 17th? Have I got that right? Yeah. So tomorrow, Saturday, is the big rally, protest, march, whatever they want to call it. They're calling it Justice for J6. It's a rally planned for tomorrow, Saturday, by the deplorables. They're marching in support of those who attacked the U.S. Capitol, and especially, specifically, for those who were arrested. They're calling them political prisoners, martyrs, and they're rallying in support of the insurrection in Washington at the Capitol. And the Department of Homeland Security warned yesterday about the potential for violence from people involved in or opposed to the Justice for J6 rally. So, I don't know. You and I have had this debate, and I think maybe I don't know if it's settled or not. My thinking evolved over time. Before the January 6th insurrection, I, like many, not all, some people anticipated the level of violence that was possible. It wasn't in my imagination. I was guilty of that so-called lack of imagination. And at the time, I was kind of on the fence. I thought, yeah, you know what? Antifa and counter-protesters should come out in large numbers, outnumber the deplorables. I never advocate violence, never, ever. I understand the Antifa philosophy of defense, of protection. That's really what they're all about. That's what, and let's be clear, I don't have to explain this to you, right? Antifa is not an organization. It's not a movement. It's just an idea. And that idea being that if you're going to protest, and especially if you're going to counter-protest against the deplorables, you have every right to protect yourself. So those who believed in the philosophy of Antifa simply believed that they're going to go out and they're not going to let the deplorables become violent against counter-protesters. They're going to be there to protect them. You know, it's a pretty old-fashioned idea. The original Antifa, of course, went to fight Hitler in Europe, right? I mean, it's pretty standard, and we used to all agree that that's a good thing, that you're going to defend righteousness, and you're not going to let bullies beat you up. Nothing really very controversial about that, for the most part. So I was advocating for counter-protesters to show up in large numbers, and I guess I had this naive notion, only in hindsight it kind of looks naive, that as happened before, we've seen cases where Nazis come out in March and the counter-protesters outnumber them 10 to 1 or 100 to 1, and they just shut them down, and it's all just kind of embarrassing for the Nazis, right? And so before January 6th, I was saying, you know what? Let's just do that. But then the mayor of Washington, D.C., and others were advising that everybody just stay home, stay in your homes. This could be trouble, and things could get really bad. And they were advising, no, don't go out and try to fight them. Just let them have their little march. And I suppose in hindsight, I don't know. I'm still on the fence, as you can see. So it's happening again here. Now, I guess the good news, if there is any, it's on a Saturday. So there are going to be fewer people in danger. Members of Congress and their staff are mostly home. They're not in their offices. There's no session happening. There's no session of Congress. There's certainly not the procedure of counting the electoral votes and certifying the electoral votes of a president. So none of that is happening. Mike Pence is somewhere safe. He's back in Indiana somewhere probably. or maybe he's moved to Florida. That's what Republicans do. They come from all over the country, then they serve for a while, then they move to Florida. So the good news, if there is any, hopefully Washington security, the Capitol Police, and everybody else involved is more prepared this time. There's no more lack of imagination. That's not an excuse. We've seen it. You don't need an imagination to know what can happen. So they're better prepared. People who might be attacked otherwise are not in town. And then so it gets back to my idea, should counter-protesters be a part of this? I don't know. I'm still on the fence. I really wish that, as I said, counter-protesters could show up, outnumber them 10 to 1, 100 to 1, 1,000 to 1, and just shut them down and just make them look bad and make them look ridiculous. That idea still appeals to me. Maybe I'm crazy. I could very well be. I'm not going to put this in the form of advice. I'm not going to advise anybody what to do. But those are the feelings I struggle with. So, okay. So Saturday, we'll see what happens. Hopefully nothing. And at best, it's a washout. Nobody shows up. It's embarrassing. They're shut down by counter-protesters. That'd be great. In really important news now, Jeopardy has made an announcement. As you know, I'm a huge fan of Jeopardy. I love it. I play along every night. Never miss it. And they have announced that Ken Jennings and Mayim Bialik will host Jeopardy for the rest of this year. So, no, it's not. This year is rapidly dwindling down here. We're heading into fall. But they've announced for the rest of 2021, they're going to have 2 hosts. Reading now from CNN Business. Sony Pictures Television has bought itself some time to sort out its Jeopardy mess. Just to get you up to speed, I'm sure you know this. Mike Richards, executive producer of Jeopardy, after a long search for a new host to replace the beloved Alex Trebek, the powers that be over at Jeopardy chose him, Mike Richards, to host the show permanently. But because of some old podcast recordings that resurfaced, and he said some pretty awful things about women and Jewish people, and, you just can't do that. And these days, that keeps you out of a nice job, rightfully so. He actually taped the first week, I think, the first week of shows that are airing right now as we speak. And then the pressure got too high, and they said, nope, he's not going to be our permanent host after all. So he's gone. All right, now back to the drawing board. Who's going to host the show? Mayim Bialik of Blossom fame and later Big Bang Theory actor. She was named to host some Jeopardy specials and some prime time shows. So that was already in place. But now, reading again here, Mayim Bialik and Ken Jennings, who are both part of the game show's television family, will host the show through the end of the calendar year, Sony said Thursday. The timing will give Sony executives at least a couple of months to determine who the permanent host of the beloved show should be. So the permanent host job is still open. I guess this is the biggest bombshell news, but it's some news for those of us who love the show. And the big news for me is I'm still in the running. I sent in my audition tape. With Richards out as host, Sony turned to Bialik, who had already been hired as the host of Jeopardy! Primetime and spin-off editions. On August 23rd, the studio said she would tape 3 weeks' worth of episodes as we move forward with production on this season of Jeopardy! Additional guest hosts will be announced, Sony said then, but now the plan has changed. Instead of bringing in guest hosts again, Bialik and Jennings will continue to helm the broadcast this fall. And of course, Ken Jennings, we all know, he's the grand champion, all-time winner. Is that most wins or most money? I think maybe it's both. Jennings, I didn't know this. He's been a consulting producer for Jeopardy! So the two of them will host through December of this year, at least. We'll see what happens next. So yeah, send in your audition tapes. I love Jeopardy! I can't help it. I tend to geek out a little bit. I'm not very good. I could never actually be on the show. I'm not smart enough. I think I told you once before, my big enjoyment every night when I watch the show is if I am able to answer a question that the 3 contestants on television don't get. If I'm the only one to get an answer, I jump up and down. I'm so excited. That makes my whole day. And that happens at least once per show. On average, once per show. One time it happened 3 times. I was over the moon. All right, so there's your Jeopardy! Update. Well, I'm sure you've heard by now about the new Bob Woodward book. I think it's his 4th on the Orange Menace administration, if I'm not mistaken. This one co-written with Bob Costas of the Washington Post, former host of Washington Week on PBS. So the two of them have a new book out. It's called Peril. And when new books are released, or just before they're released in order to boost sales, let's be honest about this. Not to be cynical, though, because these are first-rate reporters. I have no criticism of Bob Woodward and Bob Costas. And I have complete understanding that a publisher wants to get some stories out to get book sales going. You know what? I got no problem with that. As long as the facts are facts, as long as they're reported properly, as long as they're sourced, as long as they're backed up by corroborators. You know, we all saw All the President's Men, right? Robert Redford playing Bob Woodward. By the way, Robert Redford's a lot better looking than Bob Woodward. And he doesn't talk with a silly Minnesota accent. Is that where Bob Woodward is from? Minnesota? Illinois. Yeah, because he's got that little bit of an accent. He doesn't call himself a reporter. He's a rapporter. I am a rapporter. He's got a little Midwest thing going. Anyway, he and Bob Costas are top-notch journalists. So I'm not doubting any of this. I have complete faith in what they're reporting. And the big story, of course, General Mark Milley, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and they're reporting that in the final days, in fact, after the election, General Milley was legitimately, genuinely concerned that the Orange Menace was going to do something crazy and drastic. We're talking nuclear war. We're talking about attacks on China, attacks on Iran. We're talking craziness here. And General Milley was convinced that the Orange Menace had gone off the deep end and was about to do something really bad. And he was actively usurping the President of the United States. One of the big headlines, of course, is that he actually called his counterpart in China to tell him, don't worry, I won't let this happen. It's not going to happen. We're not going to attack you. All right, so two things need to be said. One, if you're following this story at all, you know that, of course, the entire conservative universe, the deplorable verse, all of Fox Nation and all of conservative talkers are just shouting that this is treason, that Milley went over the president's head to actually talk to another nation behind his back. But here's the thing. It's not only the MAGA world. There are lots of centrists and even liberals, Democrats, who are kind of saying the same thing. If this is true, if this reporting is true, and I have no reason to doubt it at all, then Milley should literally be court-martialed for treason. All right, so let me read this to you. Yahoo.com news. Retired General Jack Keane appeared Wednesday on the cable news. While Republicans have become enraged by the reporting, calling Milley's actions treasonous and calling for him to resign or be fired, Keane says the calls were nothing out of the ordinary. General Milley's making a phone call to provide reassurance, which is his job, Keane said. I mean, he's executing his responsibility, and he's doing it in concert with his own advisors and then sharing that with the interagency. Keane also said that the president not being briefed on the calls was nothing unusual and believes the whole story is being overblown. I don't see anything that is undermining the civilian control of the military, Keane said. If you took the facts that are, I think, being sensationalized in this report, that would be an issue. But that is not what the Pentagon is reporting. It seems to be pretty much in sync with what we're used to seeing. Now, I bring this up not because I'm an authority. I only bring this up to calm your own mind. There are people in the know, somebody as high-ranking as this retired general, who are saying this is not a big deal, that Milley was doing his job. And now, my own comment, as someone who's not an expert, if what Milley was seeing out of the Oval Office was true, even if it was half true, if his perception of the danger presented by the Orange Menace is at all accurate, he absolutely did the right thing in usurping the Orange Menace and in warning others around the globe. He absolutely did the right thing. Even even if you fall legally on the side of, yeah, you don't do that. That's going outside the chain of command. It's going over the head of the commander-in-chief. Even if you take that approach, even if you believe that firmly, he still did the right thing. From the very beginning, I've made the argument, you can't treat the Orange Menace like he's a real president, like he's a regular president. He's literally a madman, and he occupied the Oval Office, and he sat in a seat of incredible power. And just as he set new precedents and broke rules that were never broken before, written and unwritten, the counter to that has to be equally precedent-breaking. The only way to protect the nation from the clear, present, and imminent danger that this guy represented was to do exactly what Milley did. And others, according to that, we saw that anonymous op-ed in the New York Times back in 2018, how there were a group of insiders actively stopping the Orange Menace from doing harm to the nation. Now, you can look at the letter of the law. You can say, yeah, okay, you can't do that. This is, and if at some point a military court or a federal court comes down on that side, yeah, you did overstep your bounds. Well, okay, so be it. That's certainly not my level of expertise. I'm not going to pretend it is. But even if they do come down on that side of the legal argument, there's a much higher moral argument to be made. This is basically civil disobedience at the very highest level. You're preventing nuclear war with China? Yeah, I'm on your side. I'm absolutely on your side. So I guess my bottom line point here, and why I'm even talking about this today, is because it is such a big story in the news, and you're hearing it every day, and you're forming your opinion. And I just want you to take a step back, and let's bring the temperature down on this story. However it plays out, and it will eventually at some point play out, I'm having a hard time right now finding any fault with General Milley. He absolutely did the right thing, the only moral thing to do. And thank God he was there. Thank God there were a few insiders who were putting up roadblocks. And just one last reminder that we had an entire cabinet who refused to invoke the 25th Amendment when they should have from the very beginning. There were 100 reasons to invoke the 25th Amendment, and they didn't do it. Of course, the 25th Amendment, as you know, is a remedy by which cabinet members can remove the president because they see some real emergency. And we usually think of it in terms of physical or mental health. I think they had plenty of reason. I absolutely do. And they didn't do it because they were a bunch of lackeys. All right, so there's that story. Well, let's see, what else have we got time for today? This is a great story. I don't know if we have time for it today. Maybe I'll come back to it on a later show. Stanford University researchers are identifying acoustics that create new heart tissue. This is so great. I'm reading from a post I got in social media, and I'm not sure if the person who posted is writing this or if it's an excerpt from the article. So I don't know who to give credit to. Side note, when you do post a quote from the article, make sure you make it clear that that's a quote, that it's not your own personal writing. I notice a lot of people are a little lax about that. So this is uncredited for the moment. I keep thinking about Edgar Case's statement about sound would be the medicine of the future. I believe much is really a reawakening to the power of sound and that we now have the tools to take it further. This image shows the schematics of geometric patterns created in heart cells. The image they're referring to is part of the post. And it's kind of like, have you ever seen the video of the guy who sprinkles sand on this large metal sheet? And then he plays different frequencies, and the sand moves into these different patterns, these different geometric patterns. It's really fascinating if you've seen that. You'll know what I'm talking about. So the image along with this post has several of these patterns. The image shows the somatics or geometric patterns created in heart cells when applying various sounds. In bioacoustic sound medicine, it's taught that the sounds are imprinting every cell, and science continues to prove this ancient axiom. Cardiologist Sean Wu, MD, PhD, a whole bunch of more credits here, an acoustic bioengineer, uses acoustics to manipulate heart cells into intricate patterns. A simple change in frequency and amplitude puts the cells in motion, guides them to a new position, and holds them in place. This is just so wonderful. I just love this. Acoustics can create a form that resembles natural cardiac tissue. With sound, they can create new tissue to replace parts of damaged hearts. Acoustics can be used in reconstructing other organ tissue and blood vessels. Sounds are used to create and harmonize as well as clean and release. Both principles are used in science using high-precision acoustical generators. The same principles can be applied safely by individuals using non-invasive natural harmonic sounds such as our voices and acoustic instruments. And then there's a link to the Stanford study. I'll put this link on the Facebook page, on the Charles Purcell Facebook page. I just love this story so hard. We already know, we've known forever, that singing, the voice itself, has great healing capabilities. When you sing, you increase your lung capacity, and there are hormones released, and there's a whole long list of medical benefits, physical changes to your body on a cellular level when you sing. And I've always loved this. I just love this. So, and in my other life, I am a singer and a musician, and I've often shared these stories when I see them about the health benefits of singing. It's so much more. Of course, there are social benefits too. It's kind of a wonderful thing. It makes you happy. But I mean, hardcore scientific physical evidence, anatomical evidence about the benefits of singing. So this just takes it to a level that I was unfamiliar with. And it just sounds fascinating to me. And it's a wonderful, happy story about I'm always complaining about technology advancing too much in the realm of entertainment and gadgets and convenience, and I get annoyed by all of that. When it comes to that stuff, I'm kind of a Luddite, but I'm a huge booster of technology when it's used for something like this. In medicine and communications and transportation, there's so many wonderful things to say about advancing technology. And this is just right at the top of the list. I think this is fantastic. All right, so let's leave with that happy story today. Let's take you out to your weekend with this great little story. And I know it's my endorphins are pumping right now. I'm feeling really good about this. All right, have a great weekend. Here comes the fall. Enjoy the summer while it's still here. And I love you. Talk to you on Monday. I'm Charles Purcell.